It's been 1 year since the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League, the long-awaited director's cut of the movie that was supposed to release in 2017. Unlike that movie, which was reshot by Joss Whedon and had to be heavily scaled down to get the exact 2-hour runtime Warner Bros. Mandated, we get all of Snyder's vision on HBO Max with a runtime of 4 hours, making this possibly the longest comic book film ever made. And while I have a lot to say about the Snyder Cut, I'll keep my opinions as short and sweet as I can. The plot was much easier to follow, it was structured a lot better, Batman was actually smart and Affleck nailed his performance, the film was a lot better to look at despite the washed out color palettes, but at least it didn't make my eyes sting like the other did. Steppenwolf got a massive upgrade in terms of his character and overall design. The CGI was much more detailed, but there's still a few hiccups here and there. Cavill no longer had the botched Botox around his lip. They still wasted J.K. Simmons' Gordon, but at least he's still Jameson in the Spider-Man movies. The Flash had one of the best comic book movie moments ever near the end. Cyborg became the true heart of the movie Snyder always wanted for the character. The tone was consistent and even had better humor, which was surprising. The dialogue was incredible, and the fight scenes went from pathetic garbage to absolute eye candy. And the R rating undoubtedly gave these scenes an extra flavor of greatness. Yeah, I know I reused what I said about the 2017 version of Justice League in my Aquaman video a few years ago. I guess you could call this the Snyder cut of my old review on the movie. But seriously, Zack Snyder's Justice League was everything we wanted and should have gotten back in 2017. But instead, we were given this. I'm not gonna get into the whole situation regarding why this dumpster fire exists, unless I have to mention a few things later on, but Josstice League, as we're calling it, strikes me as a special kind of failure that Hollywood has never accomplished. Not only is this one of the worst comic book films ever made, and also one of the worst comic book films I've ever seen, but in my opinion, it is also one of the worst movies ever made in general. There's a reason why we call this a Frankenstein monster of a movie. It fails on almost every level in terms of basic continuity, technicality, and most importantly, storytelling. And a large part of that is due to the immense reshoots and rewrites they did to the movie after Snyder stepped down. There are a bunch of videos where people pointing out the many flaws of Justice League, and some even have scene-by-scene comparisons of this version with the Snyder Cut. But I think we have woefully underestimated just how badly produced this movie truly is. So I'm going to make it my mission to go through every possible problem I can find in Justice League to really give you an idea of how badly Warner Bros. Messed this film up and why it stands among the many bad comic book films as one of, if not, the worst ever made. Already, we are hit with the most infamous error in this entire movie, and that is Henry Cavill's CGI lip. Now, let's explain why this happened. After Zack Snyder wrapped up Justice League, Henry Cavill went to do Mission Impossible Fallout shortly afterwards, where he sported a naturally grown mustache in that movie. But when Snyder was kicked off the project and Joss Whedon was brought in to do extensive reshoots of his film, they asked Cavill to redo his Superman scenes. But they were hit with a huge roadblock. Paramount would not allow them to shave Cavill's mustache off. They wouldn't even allow them to make a fake prosthetic for him to wear in the movie. So Warner Bros. Had no choice but to digitally remove the mustache from Henry's upper lip, along with many excess facial hair around his cheeks, neck, and chin. Don't forget too, the crew was on a massive time crunch as well. The movie had to come out in November of 2017, but the reshoots were going on sometime in the mid-summer, so there was no time to finish up the CGI that was around Henry Cavill's face, and that's what led to this. A Superman with a CGI lip that makes him look like he had a botched Botox. I would love to see any behind the scenes photos / videos of him sporting that mustache before the effects were ever added in, because I can't imagine it just being the lip they had to remove if you see shit like this happen. So keep in mind when you watch this video, anytime you see weird stuff happen to Superman's face, it is a Joss Whedon reshoot. Anytime where that doesn't happen and his face looks normal, it's a Snyder shot. Other than that, this is just a very cringy opening with terrible lines that are meant to be funny but aren't.
Used to say that hope is like your car keys. Easy to lose, but if you dig around, it's usually close by.
Did you ever fight a hippo? Oh, that's so...
Yeah, nice effort there, Whedon. Also, Superman's acting a little bit off here, don't you think? When you compare how he acted in this movie to how he was in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, it's almost as if you're not looking at the same guy, and that will be a recurring issue in this movie, not just with him, but for all of the other characters that appeared in previous movies. There are so many retcons made with these reshoots that it makes this film feel like it's stuck in a void of its own world instead of being in an established universe. We then get into the introduction of Batman in a scene that was entirely done by Joss Whedon, and let me tell you, the editing in this scene is absolutely awful.
What are you doing?
Gotta love this shot of the robber dangling from the building. Guys, I know you wanted the movie to be a bit lighter in tone, but that does not mean you have to make it a cartoon. The crappy color grading certainly doesn't help. Now, watch what happens next, because I don't think I can explain it nearly as well as the movie did here.
What do you want from me?
Fear. I can smell it.
We'll talk about the whole fear thing later on, but let's focus on Batman taking down this parademon. We're once again treated with a terribly edited scene where Batman and the parademon are being flung around across Gotham's buildings, and then they suddenly fall back down to the same rooftop they just flew out of. And I know it's that rooftop because the robber shows up to talk to Batman. It's either that or he's a teleporter. After Batman catches the parademon in a net, it self-destructs because, why not, and it leaves a diagram of the murder boxes, the same ones Batman and Alfred have seen ever since the death of Superman. How contrived can you possibly get? This parademon just magically creates the diagrams for Batman to realize that the threat is finally coming to them, as if what Lex Luthor said to him in the prison in BVS wasn't enough for him. And it's at this moment where we get a great example of how little Joss Whedon understands Batman. Because during their talk, Batman mentions Alfred's name out loud right in front of the robber.
From space. Like an alien army?
Alfred, are you seeing this?
Way to blow your cover, backtard. But worse than that, Batman goes to recruit all the other Justice League at the jet, and he leaves the robber behind. Batman, just let a criminal run away free. Even if we disregard the fact that this is absolutely out of character for Batman, why would Joss Whedon ever write a scene where the superhero leaves a criminal behind without taking him in? It's mind-boggling. Regarding the opening credits, there ain't much to comment on besides this one shot that you all are probably aware of, and one that I cannot possibly ignore. The infamous "I tried" sign, which is often theorized as Joss Whedon sneaking in a personal message telling people he did the best he could. Look, Whedon, I do feel for you a little bit as you were given a near impossible task of reworking an entire movie with very little time to fully flesh things out. But what I saw in the previous two scenes that were entirely written by you does not give me much confidence that you actually tried to salvage this movie, which will be made even more evident when we get to the added in scenes that you thought were better than the ones that actually helped develop the characters. Plus, you're an asshole, so you get no sympathy for me regardless. Almost the entire London scene was shot by Zack Snyder, but of course the editors were on crack that day, so it's nothing but a jumpy mess. One moment, this guy walks through a metal detector and all of his men are behind him. The very next shot, they're scattered around everywhere. What? There are a total of 11 men in this room, including the man in the hat. So she fights one guy, then another, and oh my god, I just now noticed this. Look at the background. There's nobody behind her. But then it cuts to the next shot and suddenly there's a bunch of people behind her. They spliced a moment where she was closer to the people so that it could match this one shot where she was farther away from them. How do you miss that? Anyways, she fights one guy, then another, and then this guy, and that's all of them. What happened to the other henchmen? Did they magically disappear, never to be seen again? Or is this another case of terrible editing? She flings the bomb up to the sky, which, comparing that to how she threw it in the Snyder cut, that would most likely still blow the entire place up. So the fedora guy picks up a weapon from one of his... wait. Who is that guy? We did not see that man get attacked by Wonder Woman, nor did we see anyone get thrown to that part of the room. He literally spawned out of nowhere.
This would have been over quickly, but...
That is ADR if I ever heard one. I'm not even sure if that voice was from the same actor. Now, pay attention here. His rifle is set to semi-automatic, meaning he could only shoot one bullet before having to pull the trigger again. Yet once Wonder Woman blocks the bullet, now it's shooting in full auto. In the Snyder cut, we saw him set it to full auto after she blocked the bullet, but here, he just spontaneously starts blasting away. It's either that, or this guy has one hell of a trigger finger. And finally, we have a reshot Wonder Woman clip where... just look at it. Did she lose all the muscle in her body? Even with the crappy color grading, I can still see the tones do not line up with what we see in this shot that was done by Snyder. But who cares? We're done with Wonder Woman and now it's back to Batman. And strap yourselves in, everyone, because this is where the reshoots and problems of this movie get much worse. We cut back to Bruce Wayne traveling across the mountains to find Aquaman, and he seems to have grown quite a beard during the process. How much time has passed since Bruce came across those mother box diagrams? Because here, it seems like he did this overnight. So how did he grow a beard that fast? More reportedly, why do this all on horseback when you just said in a previous scene that you were using the jet? The Snyder Cut has explained why he did it all on horseback and how long it took him to get there, which in return explains why he had that beard at all. But no such explanation exists in the Whedon cut. He miraculously has a beard and we all have to go with it. There's not much to talk about Aquaman and Bruce's exchanges here, but here is where I get to play my favorite game, Spot the Green Screen. Let's see if we can find the exact moment where this completely shot scene by Zack Snyder turns into a reshoot. Okay, not there. Nope, that's Snyders. No, nothing out of the original. Nope, I don't see anything wrong with that one. Oh, there it is. Yeah. When we compare these two still frames side by side, the difference is night and day. Where should we start? How about we talk about his coat? The material is completely off. In this shot, it's smooth and clean, while in the reshoot, it's dirty and roughed up. What about his hair? Those strands do not line up with what we saw in the previous shot. Lastly, and the one that really highlights how badly done these green screen shots are, in this shot, Aquaman has a noticeable harsh shadow happening around his right face. You can't see much besides his little strands of hair, but in the reshoot, those harsh shadows are completely gone. Could you make it any more obvious that Jason Momoa is standing behind a green screen here and not on set? So Bruce sees that there's a mural on the wall depicting an Atlantean who is clearly Aquaman protecting a mother box, the same one he saw from that parademon. I got plenty to say about this, but we'll do that in a few seconds. And here, we get another reshoot, this time with Ben Affleck. Not only does his beard look fake as hell and is not in the correct color, that goes the same for his hair, but Affleck, how do I put this lightly? His face looks a bit whiter. The guy was going through a very rough time in his life, which led to him drinking extensively, which in return caused his body to blow up as shown here. You can see that around his gut in a few of the reshoots, and this also really messed with the look of his face when he's wearing the cowl. I really don't want to drag Affleck down for the whole thing because I doubt there was any way for him to counteract this issue during the reshoots, especially with how time sensitive everything was. But these reshoots have really not done him any favors, not with him or with his character. But yeah, Batman suddenly spots the mural, which I don't know how you could possibly miss something like that when it sticks out that much from the rest of the building. Then he says he'll give them 30 grand if he tells them what the murder boxes are. Spoiler alert, he never gave them the money. And this is how he responds to Aquaman when asked to leave.
You should get out. Can you at least point me to Atlantis?
Why in God's name would that piss Aquaman off? For all they know, Bruce is talking like a madman here. Yeah, he mentioned the free boxes, but is that enough to think he's on your tail? Especially when he has no idea what you guys are saying in your language? They really made Batman a complete dumbass in this movie. He seems to not know what the hell he's doing most of the time, and it hurts to see how much they botched this scene between him and Aquaman. Batman speaking to him in the Icelandic language in the Snyder cuts was the big gotcha moment for him. They shrugged him off as nothing but a crazy person talking about a magical man of the sea, and were talking behind his back in a language they think he doesn't understand, only to have him reveal to everyone that he does know the language and can speak it perfectly. That shows you how far ahead Batman is with his plans and why he's considered the smartest person in the group. Whereas in the Whedon cut, he's one step behind everyone and has to rely on dumb luck that he'll somehow get Aquaman to talk without getting his bad ass kicked. And I like that Aquaman's trying really hard to pretend he's not the Atlantean Bruce is talking about when he's literally on the giant mural Bruce saw a moment ago. How can that be anyone else besides you? Oh no, that's not me. That's Mermaid Man from the hit Nickelodeon TV show SpongeBob SquarePants. You should go ask him instead.
The Aquaman. I hear you can talk to fish.
Believe it or not, this line is actually a Snyder shot. It was added in because the executives demanded it when he was still working on the movie. And you can tell Snyder hated the line that much because it is nowhere to be found in his version. Kind of funny that most of the shots in this film that we thought were Whedon's would end up being Snyder's or vice versa. Really goes to show you how context can drastically change a scene even if the changes are minimal. There's an ADR line in this part, but that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the fact that Aquaman seems to have started walking in place in front of this building even though they're supposed to be walking away from it. I know this happened because just before the shot cuts to Bruce, we see the end of that wall being directly behind him. Then we see Bruce and it shows that they are walking away from the building. But when it cuts back to Aquaman, the end of the wall is still behind him. He didn't move at all. All of that for some stupid line to make Aquaman sound like a whiny bitch.
Don't count on it, Batman.
Why not?
Because I don't like you coming here, digging into my business, getting into my life. People from Atlantis tell me to do this, now you say do that. I want to be left alone.
But it gets worse. Yet another bad reshoot happens where the feathers on Bruce's jacket seems to have partially vanished and got whiter. Not to mention Ben Affleck's hair doesn't match with what we see in his next shot.
You ever hear of Superman? He died fighting next to me.
My point exactly.
Whoa, what the hell? Where did these guys come from? Does everyone have teleportation powers in this film?
I don't mind if the ocean dries.
How about if they boil?
Dressed like a bat. You're out of your mind, Bruce Wayne.
Honestly, it feels like these two are having completely different conversations with each other. You couldn't spend at least a little bit of time in the writing room making sure your reshot lines match up with what was already filmed? And right here, we get what is quite possibly the worst reshoot in this entire movie. Let's point out every problem here. First, and the most obvious one, is the green screen. This looks like utter shit, and it's clear he is not standing on any water at all. Second, his tattoos are completely wrong. He has 3 sets of triangles around his chest, but in here, he suddenly has 4. These inept fuckers can't even count correctly. Third, this jump cut. What were they thinking? 4. Just before Aquaman hits the water, or should I say the mattress underneath him in the green screen room, we see a tiny glimpse of his stomach, and his tattoos have mysteriously vanished. Clearly they never intended to shoot the scene any lower than around the chest, but holy shit guys, don't have him jump like that if you're not going to bother finishing up his tattoos. But perhaps the worst error in this movie is Aquaman's eyes. Aquaman has very light green eyes and tiny pupils. These are present in the Snyder shots and are even present in this reshot scene. But then look at this shot. They forgot to put his contact lenses on. How? How do you miss an error that big?
Doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Oh boy. I think it's time to take a break for now. We'll discuss more about these errors in Josstice League next time. With that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all in part 2.
Big fella. What's up? You hear that new Kurt Franklin? Nah. Turn it up.